Thomas Wooden Railway Journeys, Episode 16, Toby, the Old Reliable Engine. One morning, Sir Topham Hatt arrived at the sheds. "Toby," he said, "I need you to deliver a freight train to the docks. It's very heavy, so you need to take someone with you." "How about you, James?" he said. James groaned. "It's always me," he shouted. "Do you want to sit in the shed again, James?" he said. James didn't want to sit in the shed again. He quickly puffed away. "I will get onto it too," said Toby happily as he puffed away. Toby and James soon arrived at the yard. "Hello, Whiff," said Toby happily. "Hello, Toby. Hello, James," said Whiff happily. "Can we just get our freight train?" said James impatiently. "I already put it on platform 3, said Whiff happily. "Thank you, Whiff," said Toby happily as he puffed away. James and Toby soon coupled up to the freight train. "I could pull this train by myself," said James crossly. "Oh," said Toby. "All right," he said sadly as he puffed away. James soon managed to puff out of Knapford Station. "Hurrah, we're off! Hurrah, we're off!" James shouted. He soon arrived at Gordon's Hill. James struggled to make his way up the incline. "My wheels feel wobbly," he shouted. Just as James reached the top of the hill, he heard a splintering crack and raced down the incline. "What just happened?" shouted James. "You've broken down," said the driver. "We'll now have to call Toby for help." James now felt very silly. "Oh, I've been a very silly engine," he said sadly. Meanwhile, Toby sat sadly in a siding. Just then a signalman came running over. "What's the matter?" Toby asked. "James has broken down and wants you to help him," said the signalman. "Why me? I'm not a reliable engine," Toby said sadly. "You are the most reliable engine I know, Toby," said the signalman. This made Toby feel better. "I'll go help James," he said. "I am a reliable engine." Soon Toby arrived at Gordon's Hill. "Toby," James shouted, "I want to say sorry for being so rude to you," he said. "It's all right," said Toby as he coupled up to James. Toby tried to push, but the train was too heavy. "You can do it, Toby," shouted James. Toby's face had turned red, but with all of his might, he managed to push James up the hill. "Hurrah, you're doing it! Hurrah, you're doing it!" shouted James happily. Toby managed to push James all the way up the hill. Soon, both the engines arrived at the docks just as Toby's safety valve burst. Toby's face was as red as James' paintwork. "Thank you so much, Toby, for helping me up the hill," said James happily. "It's what friends do," said Toby. Just then, Sir Topham Hatt walked up. "I heard what you did today, Toby. You should be proud of yourself. The island of Sodor is glad to have you on this railway." Toby smiled. "You will need to go to the works," Sir Topham Hatt said. Soon Percy arrived and took Toby to the works. Weeks later, Toby arrived. "Toby," shouted James, "you're back." "Indeed I am, and I am ready to work." "I want to thank you again for being a good friend to me," James said happily. Toby smiled. "I promise I will never be rude like that again."